There's a reason the world keeps looking toward the Middle East whenever talk about the end times rises. And it's not just because of history or politics. It's because buried deep in Islamic prophecy is a detail so striking, so oddly specific, that it forces even skeptics to pause. The exact place where Jesus, yes Jesus, Isa ibn Maryam, will return to earth. And that place is not Jerusalem, not Mecca, not Rome, not Cairo, not the Vatican, but Damascus, the ancient capital of Syria. This documentary isn't here to teach theology or lecture about beliefs. It's here to tell you one of the most gripping, cinematic, and shocking stories ever recorded in Islamic tradition, a prophecy so bold it reads like a scene from the greatest movie never made. And before we are done, we'll cross borders from Turkey to Iran, from Nigeria to the USA, because this story does not stay in one country. The world is part of it. To understand why Damascus becomes a spotlight of prophecy, you need to see the city not as it is shown on the news, but as a character, timeless, battered, stubbornly alive. Streets older than London, stones older than Washington, D.C., and stories older than entire civilizations. Yet in the Islamic narrative, Damascus isn't chosen because of age, beauty, or influence. It's chosen because its future is tied to a moment that will shake the entire planet. Scholars of Islam often mention the White Minaret, a real location, the eastern minaret of the Umayyad Mosque. But instead of turning this documentary into a classroom lesson, we're turning it into a visual journey. A world waiting, a world trembling, and a world connected by a prophecy set in a city most people cannot point on a map, but feel drawn to whenever its name appears in the headlines. Picture yourself in Lagos traffic, or in the cold streets of London, or in a quiet town in Pakistan, or even in bustling New York. Life moves routinely. People worry about bills, deadlines, family issues, groceries, and rent. No one is thinking about prophecies, minarets, or the return of a prophet. And yet Islam says that when Jesus returns, the world will not pause. People will still be busy, distracted, and unsure, until everything changes in one unforgettable instant. Damascus becomes the unexpected center point, not because the world is paying attention to it, but because prophecy never needed the world's permission to unfold. Isn't it strange? The return of one of the most beloved figures in human history, in a place many people never expected. And so the story begins on a night unlike any other. Not a quiet night, not a peaceful night, but a night when the world is already shaking from chaos. Islamic prophecy mentions a figure, the Dajjal, often compared to the Antichrist, causing global turmoil. Countries are on edge. Think Egypt arguing with neighbors, America issuing statements, Iran responding aggressively, Turkey balancing politics, Nigeria dealing with internal tension, Europe trying to hold itself together. The world is exhausted. But even without fully understanding the theology, anybody can relate to that sense of something is wrong. And in that tension, when the world feels tight like a bowstring about to snap, the prophecy says Jesus will descend at the eastern part of Damascus. The moment is not peaceful. It's electrifying. The narration focuses not on angels or heavenly light, but on the earth below. Syria, broken by war, scarred by conflict, misunderstood by outsiders, is chosen as a landing site. And this is where the documentary leans into its cinematic soul, not a classroom explanation, but a drama unfolding. Picture drones flying over Damascus rooftops, the old bazaar, the cracked walls, the stubborn trees that still grow despite the bullets that once flew past them. This is not a city of luxury. This is a city of survival. And maybe, just maybe, that is why the prophecy places Jesus there, because survival is the beginning of rebirth. Now, let's cut to another part of the world. Saudi Arabia. Mecca and Medina stand as the heart of Islam, drawing millions. Some viewers might think Jesus would return there, but Islamic prophecy says no. His descent is elsewhere. Even Jerusalem, with its long connection to prophets, is not the landing point, though it will play a major role later. Instead, the narrative deliberately shifts attention to a city often overshadowed. And there's something strangely poetic about Jesus descending not where the world expects, but where the world least anticipates. Think about that contrast. Crowded holy cities and then war-torn Damascus. Meanwhile, the world is not silent. Across continents, tensions rise. People in Egypt argue about politics. Turkey faces unrest. In America, media outlets argue nonstop. In the United Kingdom, analysts debate Middle East crises. Nigerians scroll through news feeds filled with confusing headlines. Pakistanis, Jordanians, Indonesians all feel the global pressure. But none of them realize the prophecy is about to intersect with their world. That's the beauty of a prophecy unfolding. It doesn't warn everyone. It doesn't advertise. It simply arrives. The story fast-forwards to the exact moment of descent. Not slow, not gentle, but sudden. Islamic texts describe Jesus descending with his hands resting on the wings of two angels. But again, we're not turning this into a lecture. We're treating it like the opening scene of a blockbuster film. The sky over Damascus is dark, but a glow slices through it. People on the streets feel a pressure shift. Some freeze, some run, some ignore it entirely until it's too late. Imagine standing in any city, Cairo, New Delhi, Abuja, Toronto, and suddenly news breaks. A strange light has appeared over Damascus. At first, no one believes it, but disbelief lasts only seconds. As Jesus descends, the minaret becomes illuminated with glow no artificial light could create. The story emphasizes reactions. A taxi driver in Damascus slams the brakes. A shopkeeper drops his goods. A woman on a rooftop stops mid-sentence. A soldier, exhausted from conflict, looks up with trembling hands. This is not a peaceful postcard moment. It's raw, overwhelming, frightening, powerful. And across the world, from Morocco to Malaysia, from Russia to Brazil, people stare at their screens confused, terrified, hopeful. Whether Muslim, Christian, atheist, or undecided, every human feels something shift. But the most gripping part isn't just the descent itself. It's how the world reacts within minutes. In Jordan, people rush to rooftops. In Turkey, live streams begin trending. In the UK, commentators scramble for explanations. In the United States, news channels show shaky footage from Syria with captions like "Unverified phenomenon over Damascus." Egypt's social media explodes with speculation. Nigeria's X timeline is filled with excitement, fear jokes, conspiracy theories, everything at once. The world becomes a spectator to a prophecy unfolding in real time, caught between disbelief and awe. And in the middle of all this noise, Jesus, calm, composed, descending like a figure stepping out of legend, lands at the eastern minaret. The moment is cinematic not because of Hollywood effects, but because of the stunned silence that follows. This is not a religious ceremony. This is history rewriting itself in front of billions. And nobody, not even the skeptics, can deny that something extraordinary is happening. Once Jesus descends, the prophecy says he will wipe the sweat from his brow, and every person who sees him will know instantly that this is no ordinary human. Not because of a crown, not because of a throne, not because he speaks loudly, but because the truth radiates from him. People in Syria step back instinctively, not in fear, but in a kind of shock that words cannot describe. Meanwhile, politicians around the world scramble. News agencies call emergency meetings. Religious leaders in places like Rome, Cairo, calm, and Lagos issue statements urging calm. But the truth is, no one is calm. Even those who don't know the Islamic prophecy feel something uncanny. The moment becomes a mirror. Some hearts soften, some harden, some panic. Yet Jesus remains silent for a few breaths, taking the city beneath him, as though acknowledging the weight of what comes next. The tension gets thicker when a message races through crowds near the mosque. The Dajjal is approaching. Whether people believe in him or not, their fear is real. Soldiers in Syria ready their weapons. Civilians run through the narrow streets. And from here, the documentary becomes less about religion and more about survival. The world is no longer just watching Damascus. It is watching a confrontation as heard in stories but never expected to see. In countries like Iran and Iraq, people brace themselves, unsure whether this moment signals hope or doom. Governments send drones to capture footage. Analysts try to compare events with historical texts. But nothing compares. Nothing prepares anyone for what the prophecy says will happen next. Jesus will confront the greatest deceiver humanity has ever known, not in a mystical realm, not in another world, right here on Earth. But before that confrontation, something astonishing occurs. When people lay eyes on Jesus, the narration highlights a strange phenomenon. Every believer's heart fills with immediate recognition, while every deceiver feels exposed. This isn't just a spiritual moment. It's a psychological earthquake. People from Riyadh to Johannesburg whisper, "Is this truly him?" Others in New York or Paris refuse to believe anything supernatural is happening. Some insist it must be CGI, governments, or alien interference. But disbelief becomes harder by the second. Why? Because Jesus begins moving through Damascus not like a celebrity, not like a warrior, but like someone with a mission so urgent that the world around him blurs. Soldiers lower their weapons, civilians follow him from a distance, and word spreads through Syria faster than wildfire. He is heading east toward the approaching threat. Meanwhile, outside Syria, global tension skyrockets. Russia raises security levels. Israel watches the situation intensely. Saudi Arabia calls for emergency consultations with neighboring countries. Qatar broadcasts nonstop coverage. Pakistan scholars debate live on TV. Nigeria's pastors, imams, and ordinary people talk endlessly about whether the moment is real prophecy or mass hysteria. The United States sends reconnaissance planes. China issues cryptic statements. Every country senses that the world is no longer in a normal timeline. Something historic is unfolding. Yet in all this noise, Damascus remains the epicenter, a city standing between two forces destined to meet. And the documentary emphasizes something important. This showdown is not about politics. It's not about borders. It's not about geography. It's about truth versus deception on a global stage. The Dajjal, according to Islamic prophecy, travels the world at incredible speed, spreading manipulation and chaos. But he refuses to enter Mecca and Medina, and eventually his path leads toward Syria. This detail isn't framed as theology in our story. It's framed like a thriller. As Jesus walks through Damascus, people notice how the atmosphere changes around him. The air feels lighter. Fear softens. Even buildings seem calmer. But miles away, the ground shakes slightly as rumors spread that the Dajjal's forces are getting close. Think of it like the build-up to the final act of a blockbuster film. Only this is not fiction. It's prophecy claimed to be centuries old. And every country, from Turkey to Brazil, from India to Germany, knows they are witnessing the build-up to something world-defining. The world becomes restless. Flights are canceled. Stock markets panic. Energy prices spike. Internet traffic strains. People in London check news every second. Those in Lagos pray. Those in Karachi stay glued to their screens. Cairo streets are buzzing. New York anchors sound out of breath. But in Damascus, something remarkable happens. People start gathering with a strange sense of unity. Sunnis, Shias, Christian skeptics, they all feel that history is happening in front of them. The story doesn't present this as a religious miracle, but as a human moment. The entire city becomes an arena of emotion. Fear, hope, confusion, amazement, blending into a single heartbeat. And Jesus walks, calmly, steadily, as if every step is written. Then comes a moment the prophecy describes vividly. As Jesus approaches the outskirts of Damascus, the Dajjal appears with force that terrifies even the bravest soldiers. Not a Hollywood monster, not a horned beast, but a human with unbelievable influence, the type of charisma that can pull crowds instantly. Yet the second he lays eyes on Jesus, the documentary slows everything down. The Dajjal's confidence cracks. His composure melts. He stumbles backward. Why? Because prophecy says Jesus' presence alone exposes him. No speeches, no battles, no negotiations. Just truth overwhelming falsehood. And across the world, from Saudi Arabia to Argentina, from Kenya to Canada, people hold their breath. Jesus advances. The Dajjal retreats. What follows is not a long fight. It's not a dramatic duel. It's a moment of finality. Jesus ends the deception with a single decisive act, fulfilling a prophecy that once sounded mythical to millions. The world watches in disbelief as the greatest manipulator falls. And that's when something incredible happens. The chaos begins to lift. People in Damascus feel the tension ease. Across continents, the atmosphere shifts as though the world itself exhales for the first time in years. In cities like Istanbul, Berlin, Abuja, and Los Angeles, people cry, cheer, or stand frozen. Whether they believe in Islam or not, they know one thing. This moment will be remembered forever. But the story doesn't end here. Jesus doesn't ascend back to the sky. He doesn't disappear. Instead, prophecy says he will live on earth, guiding humanity with justice like no leader ever has. And from this point on, the documentary transforms into a worldwide journey. Jesus travels to different regions, and his presence reshapes everything. In Jerusalem, hostility dissolves. In Egypt, people feel a strange peace. In Turkey, borders soften. In Iran, conflicts pause. In Pakistan, unity increases. Nigeria experiences an unexpected wave of calm. And in Western countries like the UK and the US, people reevaluate their priorities. It's not religion commanding them. It's the atmosphere of truth. In the weeks following the Great Confrontation, life on Earth feels different. Not perfect, not magical, but lighter, as if humanity has stepped out of a long, dark tunnel. Damascus, once the center of conflict and tragedy, becomes the heartbeat of a new era. Pilgrims, leaders, and ordinary people travel from every corner of the world. From Indonesia to Morocco, from South Africa to Canada, people arrive to witness the city where history shifted. The documentary highlights the strange emotional contrast. The same streets that once echoed with sirens now echo with footsteps of people searching for hope. And Jesus moves among them, not with royal guards or ceremonial processions, but with humility and purpose. His presence calms arguments instantly. His words soften hardened hearts. His decisions create unity in places where no politician ever succeeded. This isn't a fairy tale. It's a world attempting to rebuild itself. And Damascus is the unlikely capital of change. Soon, leaders from powerful nations begin sending delegations. The United States dispatches representatives cautiously, unsure of how to approach the situation. European leaders prefer diplomacy, trying to understand what this new era means for global politics. African countries, including Nigeria, Kenya, and Ethiopia, speak openly about the hope this moment brings. Middle Eastern nations, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Qatar, and UAE, seek stability and cooperation. But despite all the political maneuvering, Jesus avoids a performance of politics entirely. He focuses on justice, fairness, and healing. The documentary emphasizes that he doesn't rule like a king or command like a military leader. Instead, he restores trust between communities, settling disputes with wisdom people immediately recognize as truth. Even skeptics who once dismissed prophecy begin reconsidering everything they thought they knew. As the story continues, the documentary shifts to show everyday people around the world. In India, a family sits together and talks peacefully for the first time in years. In Egypt, strangers help each other on the street without expecting anything in return. In Turkey, long-standing tensions soften. In the UK, public life becomes less aggressive. In Nigeria, communities once divided by politics or religion begin working together. Across oceans, the atmosphere feels change, not because everyone suddenly becomes perfect, but because hope is no longer a luxury. It's a daily experience. And at the center of it all stands Jesus, not enforcing change with miracles, but inspiring people by presence alone. His existence becomes a reminder that truth, when finally revealed, can transform even the hardest hearts. One of the most cinematic parts of the prophecy comes next, Jesus traveling to Jerusalem. The documentary shows his journey through historical landscapes, Syria's rugged edges, Jordan's ancient pathways, and the quiet roads leading toward Al-Quds. The world watches the trip like the most anticipated broadcast of all time. News crews line the roads. Drones hover overhead. Children hold signs. Elders weep. It is not politics drawing crowds. It is destiny. When Jesus finally steps into Jerusalem, the city falls into a silence so deep that people claim they can hear their own heartbeat. The documentary captures faces: Muslim, Christian, Jewish, atheist. All are overwhelmed, not by doctrine, but by the magnitude of witnessing something humanity has talked about for centuries. But the prophecy also mentions that Jesus will break the cross, kill the swine, and abolish the jizya. The documentary reframes these not as violent acts, but as symbolic gestures closing old chapters of religious conflict. They represent the end of misunderstanding, the end of manipulation, and the beginning of universal clarity. Scholars from Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, and the UK appear briefly in interviews, not to lecture, but to explain how these actions symbolize unity. Meanwhile, people across continents feel the weight of centuries lifting. The world looks less chaotic not because problems vanish, but because leadership grounded in truth brings light to places long filled with confusion. In Jerusalem, Jesus leads in a way the world has never experienced. He refuses palaces. He rejects titles. Instead, he brings communities together for meals, conversations, and justice. He corrects oppression with fairness, not force. And slowly, the city becomes a symbol of peace instead of conflict, the transformation people once believed impossible. Meanwhile, people from countries like Brazil, Mexico, Ghana, and Japan begin traveling to the Middle East simply to witness this era. International media channels shift from political commentary to documenting acts of unity. And every time Jesus speaks, regardless of language barriers, people understand him. Not because of translation, but because truth has a way of reaching hearts directly. One of the most touching scenes in the documentary focuses on Jesus visiting ordinary homes, not mansions, not elite gatherings, simple households, a small apartment in Damascus, a tent in a refugee camp, a modest home in Amman. His presence alone heals wounds between family members, restores marriages, and comforts the lonely. In Nigeria, the story shows a family watching broadcasts of his visits and feeling inspired to reconcile after years of division. In Bangladesh, a community gathers around a single television to hear his message. In France, skeptics who once mocked religion sit silently, wondering how one man could create such global calm without armies, wealth, or propaganda. No miracles are needed, only sincerity. As years pass, the documentary fast-forwards. Nations cooperate in ways once unimaginable. Refugees return home. Economies stabilize. Cultural tensions decline. Israel and Palestine experience a level of peace the world once thought impossible. Conflict in regions like Afghanistan, South Sudan, and Myanmar slow dramatically. The world isn't perfect. Storms still come, disagreements still happen, but humanity finally has a compass. Everything feels different when leadership is built on justice rather than ego. And throughout it all, Jesus remains grounded, moving to the world without seeking fame. Children love him instantly. Elders cry when they meet him. Adults feel ease in his presence. His leadership becomes the global standard. As Jesus approaches the end of his life on earth, the documentary becomes emotional. Damascus, the city where the prophecy began, becomes the city where the era concludes. Crowds gather around him. The same streets that witness his descent now witness humanity's gratitude. People from every corner of the world, Qatar, Sudan, Australia, Germany, Malaysia, Nigeria, stand together in a way no world leader ever achieved. Not because they were forced, not because they were manipulated, but because truth, justice, and sincerity brought them together. And as Jesus departs this world years later, the world does not return to chaos instantly. Instead, it carries the memory of a time when humanity lived under genuine peace. The documentary ends where it began, with Damascus standing under a quiet sky. The White Minaret, once just a landmark, now symbolizes the greatest turning point in human history. People still visit it. Tourists, believers, skeptics, historians, filmmakers, each standing silently, trying to grasp the fact that a prophecy came true in this very location. The world is not perfect, but it is forever changed. And the final narration closes with a simple, powerful truth. Sometimes the most unexpected places become the center of destiny. And that is why the question, why Damascus, will echo through time, reminding every generation that even in the most unlikely corners of Earth, history can unfold in ways more shocking, more beautiful, and more cinematic than anything humanity could ever invent.